Welcome to another edition of Working with Gen Z. Friends, we often say that our worldview is shaped by the experiences, the values, and the beliefs that have been given to us. And that's a function of many things that we experience throughout our life. And the worldview tends to be a very, very important aspect of who we become and how we see the world. And it almost kind of becomes part of our belief system. And as we've spoken in the past, the context for each of our generation has a huge impact on how they see themselves, how they see others, and how they show up at work. So today we're going to be actually looking at the worldview, if you will, or the bird's eye view of the context of the Gen Z generation. So far, we've touched upon many aspects which kind of impact that individual dimensions when you think about the workplace. But today we're going to try and look at kind of the forest from the trees to say that, okay, yeah, well, all this is true. Let's kind of take a couple of steps back and see that how do we understand this iGen generation? And to help us with that is my guest, Nirja Singh. Nirja, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nikhil. Thank you.
Excellent. So, Nirja, tell us a little bit about yourself, your work, and a little bit about your background.
Well, Nikhil, this is my fifth career. I'm a professional speaker on generational diversity. I burn with this particular subject. In the past, I've been in media and education, but for the last 4 years, I've begun to call myself the senior teenager. You see that in my background, teenager. And my tagline is a millennial in spirit with the benefit of hindsight. I was looking around and seeing with my daughters, with their friends, as a teacher, as a commentator, as a journalist, that there was a palpable disconnect between generations. And even though people were saying they've always experienced this, the one we see now is far more visceral and radical. And that is when I began to write about it, to speak about it, to address it, and try to understand. So that's what I do right now.
Fantastic. And I know recently we were together and I really learned a lot.
Yes.
All the insights and, the work that you've done. So let's get to it, Nirja. I'm looking forward. This is going to be great. Thank you for agreeing to this very good and important episode. So let's start by just talking about, how do you define worldview and why do you think it's an essential concept when you think about generational differences?
Well, a worldview, in very simple terms, is a particular philosophy of life, Nikhil. I am a gold medalist in philosophy, university gold medal, and philosophy's been considered a redundant and a defunct subject for a while. But really, that is what defines who we are. Philosophy defines a framework against which we make our life choices and our decisions. So a worldview is what will explain what we see happening with Gen Z. Unfortunately, we are not able to take that larger picture view, the bird's eye view, the reference against which they are living the way they are living, and we are communicating the way we are communicating. So a worldview literally is a particular philosophy of life, or you can call it a conception of the world. And I do want to share that when my kids were small, I used to tell their father that we must bring up our daughters to have a benevolent view of life. I didn't want them growing up cynical or suspicious or malevolent beings. That is what a worldview can do to you. But I found that my girls were growing up angry, they were growing up confused, and sometimes even resentful. They were using phrases like, I need time to process this, understandable. Don't make this about you, or I don't have the bandwidth for this, or Ma, you are a narcissist, or Father, you are an unavailable father. Ideas and concepts that our worldview did not really teach us, but their worldview was telling them this. So it's important for all of us to understand where those attitudes and those belief systems and those values are coming from, and what is the worldview that is their reference point.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we want to get to that, and I think we're going to double click onto that very important point that you made about the worldview, and it literally becomes the way we carry ourselves and how we see ourselves and how others see us. Let's talk before we go and kind of understand that a bit deeper from different lenses. Why do you sense, Nirja, is there and this growing divide among the worldview of the Gen Z and the older generations? Perhaps one can argue that there was always some gap between generations, but do you sense that it's maybe increasingly wider than any other generations of the past between them and the older generations?
Absolutely. Nikhil, we talk about technology, we talk about social media, all the different aspects of the younger generation's lives, but really below this, pinning them all, underpinning them all is the worldview. And what's happening is that from ritual, the simplest way of putting it, we have gone, we meaning human beings, we have gone from ritual to reason to relative. That's what's happened. So it's not as so anybody is to blame. There were circumstances, there was a reason why we were making the choices we were making. And the only way we can improve our communication is by understanding. And to do that, we have to first understand why those divides happened in the first place. So, what are the three worldviews that we are talking about? Let's talk about the first one. It is the pre-modern thought. What was happening back then? There were rituals. It was shaped by rituals. And not just for centuries, Nikhil, for absolutely millenniums. And it covered the entire agricultural age. And those days, the decisions were made on what our ancestors did. And where did that lead us? They were formed, our beliefs were formed, we were getting them from our grandparents, and science played a very, very small role at that time. And remember, people who were saying that the earth is not flat, it's round, they were being lynched. There was witch hunting going on. And life was not so much about common sense as about common practice, let's say. And from this, the next worldview emerged. That was the post-World War, actually the time of Renaissance, Enlightenment. That was the age of what we call reason. And science became supreme. Evidence-based decisions. Remember, even in school, we would do experiments. Everything had to be had to have an aim, a procedure, then there had to be a conclusion, proof, all of that. Now, we were looking for analytical, objective truth at that time. But that boxed us in a certain manner into just fact-based reasoning, and emotions got a little left out. Now along come our next generation. And what happens by then? They find that the definition of life that the modern philosophy was giving us was too narrow and too rigid. And postmodern thought now began to push relativism. Everything became relative. You have your truth, Nikhil. I have my truth. And our young generation, they have their truth. So individual experience is what you base your thoughts on now. So subjective opinion, spiritual perception, beliefs. I've got mine, you've got yours. You don't tell me what to do. And there's a lot of gray. Not everything is black and white. So in this postmodern world, relative worldviews, what's happening is they don't stand on any absolute truth. And because there is a scarcity of absolute truth, there's also a scarcity of security.
Yeah.
And that makes the younger generation anxious. They don't have too much to kind of hook upon or draw their sense of optimism from. And that leads to all kinds of all kinds of, anxieties and sometimes negative emotions like resentment, confusion, mental health issues. And that is what is causing the divide, because we are shaped by the times that we lived in. So that it's important to understand where each generation is coming from and why they are a particular way and why they are divided now. It's because of these three distinct worldviews.
Yeah, no, very well said. I think the experiences just shape and add and become our belief system to the point that they kind of become our mental model, and that's just the lens we carry.
Absolutely.
So let us talk now, Nirja. Obviously, you've shared, such a good insight about the three different sort of phases or points in time. How do we try and kind of look at how do we help, let's say, just the different stakeholders, right? So if and I'm going to look at here just primarily from the working lens first, right? So if I'm a manager, I have a different context and a different lens. The Gen Z, they're being given a certain set of cars. They have a different context, a different set of lens. And you've talked about these three very distinct, things that are shaping each of the generations. So help us and let's talk about, okay, if, both for the Gen Z as well as from someone who's managing a Gen Z, so it could be a professor, it could be a boss, or a parent, right? What can they do more practically?
Well, it begins by acknowledging, understanding that these three worldviews are different. However, each one of them alone is not good enough. They each have their pluses and their minuses. So if all the stakeholders can be brought to a table and made to understand what these worldviews are, and the fact that these worldviews can also help reduce generational conflicts, and how you understand these three worldviews, you acknowledge diverse perspectives. When you understand the differences, you acknowledge the diverse perspectives. So that will lead to empathy instead of outright rejecting what a young person is saying today. If, let's say, a young person says that they want to go for gender medical transitioning, and you are shocked and you say, what is going on? Instead of that, if you appreciate that their world is very different, their world is like a shape shifting amoeba. It goes this way, it goes that way. There is no center of gravity at this time. There's a lot going on there. So regular sessions to educate people in a company, any a group of stakeholders, understand what the different generations value, and that will lead to empathy. For instance, tell them why the older generation values stability or tradition. Why is the younger generation prioritizing innovation or inclusivity? So find common ground and very, very consciously cherry pick the best from each era. And once you are together and you're able to see this is how we have journeyed, mankind has journeyed, then it's possible to bring the best from each worldview. And let's say, how do you find common ground, you would say? How can you practically do that? You integrate elements of all the three worldviews, and so that generations can address shared concerns. You can be facilitating this adaptation at the level of companies or in schools, colleges, wherever multi-generational teams are working together. So help the older people to become familiar with technology. And we have seen mentoring happening, reverse mentoring happening, diagonal, vertical. All these are very, very concrete systems to get people to pick the best or learn from each other. And effective communication is the most important. That is what will help you understand the terms like eco-anxiety, for instance. Young people it's been diagnosed or it's been included in the diagnostic of the statistical manual that as a disorder. And very difficult for my generation to understand what the hoo-ha is about. But young people are genuinely frightened. Not only are they frightened for themselves, they're also concerned about their loved ones, their parents, their grandparents. I remember my daughter used to tell me that we have to build trenches or go into the mountains because water is coming and all kinds of fears. So it just create these discussions, communicate very openly with each other, and just acknowledge and integrate the strengths of each worldview. And in workshops, in seminars, in webinars, there are multiple ways to do that, Nikhil.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think I think I'd like to build on everything that you said, Nirja, and I think all our listeners would agree. To be getting that awareness first, and I think you explained that so beautifully. Let's go a step further to say that okay, I kind of now understand, and there is this need to build empathy. Come what may, how you see it. In your experience, do you have a success story or in your practice or with your clients or anywhere else from all your interactions where you've seen a success story to say that, okay, this was kind of the divide and this is over a period of time, we build this together. This is kind of what we did. Maybe a story which is a positive story and a story where somebody was, working towards it, but it tend to go the other way. So just curious if anything that you can share and maybe more so just on the process, the time, what did each side do to kind of get to a workable, comparable place where they had an appreciation of both sides.
Well, my experience, Nikhil, has not been long enough because I believe acknowledgement of this new diversity is just beginning to happen only the last couple of years. So I have taken up projects with companies. Yes, I've seen listening circles come up. My elder daughter did that. And I've heard a lot of conversation. I've been a part of workshops, but it has not gone on long enough because some kind of a tokenism is still happening, just as it's happening in the, in the green, what you call it, greenwashing. So I'm not saying it's generational diversity washing, but that conviction that this is something that has to be taken by the horns and it is affecting lives. That has not yet happened, Nikhil. So, but I'm hopeful because every other day when somebody contacts me and says that they want me to come and talk to these employees about generational diversity, I feel the sense of hope that they are acknowledging. Like you and I met in Pune, and that company just calling us there. For me, it was a big thing. This is acknowledgement. So I would say I don't have a very clear-cut success story as yet. What I have to say is hope that people are beginning to realize the significance of this diversity and then beginning to talk about it. So that's most important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody who is kind of appreciating or getting that awareness, it's work in progress. But they're saying that look, if we should acknowledge, there is enough to learn from each side, and that kind of comes to my next question, Nirja, which is to say that in your experience or from your point of view, what would you say can the Gen Z learn from the older generations? Maybe 2 or 3 things that come to mind, and then let's flip it the other way, where you can say that maybe it's not all of them who's the problem. What can we learn? Meaning all the other generations, right? Whether it's millennials, Generation X, boomers, or whoever it is, right? Well, so maybe two parts to the question. First is, are there things that the Gen Zs can learn from the other generation? And let's flip it around to say that, okay, what about the other generation can learn from Gen Z?
Where Gen Z is concerned, I'm a little wary of saying what they can learn because the circumstances are so different. Their circumstances are very different. And even if I were to say that they could learn stoicism, or they could learn uh, they could learn that not everything in life is black and white, but their circumstances are so different, and they face such different challenges that maybe the skills that they learn from us may not apply in their world today. And certainly they could learn from us a more regular lifestyle, very basic. And they could learn from us to value sleep a little more, that they don't sleep enough. They could they could learn from us the importance of the social contract, how we stay married and bring up our families. That is the ultimate social contract, and that translates into you have to sometimes compromise and sacrifice minor inconveniences for the sake of bigger conveniences. So that is something they could learn from us. And again, I would say, disclaimer, Nikhil, that these need not necessarily apply entirely to their life and the world that they're living today. And we need to learn from them their beautiful openness, how beautifully they accept differences, how kind they are, and how much their heart beats for social justice. And I know they're dissed sometimes, and they're called, what is all this wokeism, and you're not helping at home, and you want to go and help save the forest in some distant country, distant continent. But all this has made us, I think, more sensitive. I think they're hurt far more, and they experience far more pain. For instance, the term psychic pain, I didn't know what it meant until some years ago. And I heard it in the context of young people today experiencing that. And it's a cause of concern. So we definitely need to learn sensitivity from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we look at the kind of cards that they've been handed in the 25 odd years of their young life, I think they've seen a handful of things from from the pandemic to the climate crisis and the energy crisis and the Me Too movement, and now we have the AI and the ML revolution, which is also sort of creating a doomsday scenario. So Nirja, let's kind of extrapolate this, if we have to say that the world is I think from the Gen Z's point of view, if they were to look at they've seen so much of turbulence, and it doesn't seem to kind of slow down, right? And if we had to say that, okay, this is what they're seeing, and if it is just going to keep going in that direction, how do we help them, right? What's the way in which we can be mindful when we look at that? Okay, there's all of this kind of the perfect storm that's out there. You have the job crisis that we're hearing in our country. You are, hearing about this polarization that is happening in the world in the name of communities, religion, and nations are fighting. And, all of this is happening, and, it's shaping their political ideology, shaping so many of their things. So, how do we help them, right? How do we hold their hands, whether it's a corporate manager, or a parent, or even a professor who's trying to get them ready to look at the world? So any tips, anything that you can share?
Before we go there, Nikhil, may I take a moment to just extend the last question that you asked me, where we were talking about empathy and what we could learn from them and what they could learn from us. Now, there is a rider to this, and many of us, even you and I, who talk on this subject, sometimes we overlook it, and there's a situation where the older people also find themselves struggling. So let's say we talk about empathy, but in practical application of empathy, how do you exercise empathy? Now, what's happening is we're carrying it to the other extreme, and how do we do that? Sometimes it is leading to moral complications. Let's say, for instance, because we ourselves don't know where to draw the line, where to hold the younger generation accountable also, because even for a leader to be a therapist and a cheerleader, a boss today has to be all of this. You have to be a therapist, you have to be a cheerleader, you have to set an example, you have to commiserate, because Gen Z is bringing their entire self to work. So this is just a word of caution here, that we need to talk about this and look at it. What does unfiltered, unreserved empathy do? And how to really exercise that, because we are forgetting to draw a boundary and hold them accountable. So they owe us also. That also needs to be spoken about, I believe. So that's important. Sometimes overindulgence can happen with Gen Z from bosses. Also, sometimes unhealthy behaviors can be enabled.
Yeah.
Because we're walking on eggshells around them. We are just failing to address certain underlying issues. For instance, substance abuse, let's say. We're not calling them out on substance abuse. Marijuana and pot is so rampant, but it's not spoken of openly. These things need to be spelled out because it is doing something. It's doing something to them. For example, empathy could lead to favoritism or biases sometimes.
Yeah.
So there's this feeling of unfairness in companies, in families, and when we don't spell out enough about accountability, then it can lead to moral dilemmas and there can be unintended consequences. So I think what we need to do is not only understand and support young people, but also balance it with appropriate guidance, accountability, and fairness, so that we can avoid all these potential moral complications. We are not doing that. Some of us are frightened because we are
that's
confused.
a good point, Nirja. I think you make such a good point, and I'm sure if there are parents who are listening, they may be grappling if they have a young son or a teenage son who's growing up and grappling with some of the things that he or she is trying to kind of do as a way to identify and create their identity. But even at the workplace, right, there is often this label that gets put that maybe that's a very fragile generation. So on the one hand,
Yes.
I think if you, as they say, if you don't call out, and the time, the spade as a spade, it can almost reinforce that learning or that behavior, and that can further validate them to say that this is just the way the world is, and this is how I'm going to be, and this is how I will continue to do. But at the same time, there is this fear, perhaps also, and I've heard many companies and managers say that we don't know how to manage, and we have to beg and plead, and they're almost in some sense conflict avoiding in these situations, right? So any general tips? I mean, is that obviously something that, do you see that it's a longitudinal process? Do you see that that needs to be done as soon as you kind of see something? Just what are your thoughts there? Because I think you make such a good point that if you don't kind of groom or call this generation out where it's need to be, even that's dangerous.
Absolutely. There is a real danger of going too far with just empathy and not balancing it with the, setting of clear expectations or providing them constructive feedback and all of this, encouraging an open dialogue. All that will happen once we acknowledge that this is a new diversity and this has to be addressed. And in effect, my fear is, Nikhil, that we just might end up, my generation, the next generation, and the next generation, they just might end up just being space holders. You're just holding space for them. I read somewhere beautiful description that what you need to be for a young person is a car parking slot, and the young person is heated, overstimulated, charged up, burning at both ends. And what the boss needs to be, or the parent needs to be, is a parking slot. Just hold space so that they can cool off. The thing is that a living has to be made, and we have to be progress, and inventions have to be done, and the wars have to be fought, and cricket matches have to be won, and movies have to be made. All this life has to happen.
Yeah.
It cannot be happening from a parking slot.
Yeah.
And I think my generation, our generations have been caught so by surprise at what they're seeing around them. And when my child comes and tells me, I think I'm a woman trapped in a man's body, it takes me time. I understand now, but it takes you time.
Yeah.
There are new phenomena around you.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's important to take a step back and ask yourself, are we balancing compassion with consequences for Gen Z?
Yep. Yeah.
Are we setting clear expectations, firstly? Are we spelling out the standards? You offer encouragement and your resources, but you also spell out what you expect. Then are you giving them feedback? They love feedback. The narrative is that they actively seek feedback and they do, because I've seen young people around me do that. Is it empathetic but constructive also? Are you addressing mistakes and offering areas of improvement? Sometimes in a manner which can set them off, tick them off, but you have to do it in a manner keeping in mind what makes them tick, what makes them tick, what makes them go. So remember that. Then are you encouraging an open dialogue? Sometimes we are so frightened of what is coming our way. We don't foster open communication. You'd rather fight or flee. We need to stand ground. Bosses need to stand ground and be comfortable discussing challenges and concerns. And the whole idea is to maintain accountability, at the same time, provide the appropriate support that they need. And of course, fair and consistent consequences, Nikhil.
Yeah.
So keeping in mind the individual circumstances, they are very sensitive to unfair practices. And absolutely right. I completely respect them for that. But make sure that whatever consequences they face are viewed as just and equitable. So a balance between compassion and accountability. I think if we are able to do that, I think we are a long way forward in this communication and this collaboration.
Yeah, no, what a good point. I think I will just reiterate this, Nirja. Also, again, while it's important as you really call this out, I think a lot of it could also be sometimes the people who manage Gen Zs, whether it's the bosses, whether the professors, or even parents. I think they need to be able to face and have the courage to
Yes.
Give feedback, give that constructive feedback. Sometimes that lack of awareness becomes the issue themselves, and I think it goes both ways. But I really like the analogy of parking spot, and I'm just trying to think that, okay, how long can the manager be in that parking spot?
We won't take a parking spot.
I think as a parent or in any other role, perhaps you're a bit more patient, but as a beautiful analogy, and I think I really like space holders. So Nirja, let's, as a way to close out, two things that you would, as all your work, with so much work that you do on generations, two things that you would kind of advise as do's and the don'ts, right? So let's talk first for all our stakeholders who are managing Gen Z. And again, we'll keep this to the working world, where we say that, okay, if you're a boss or a manager, what are some of the do's and don'ts? Maybe one or two do's and don'ts that they should do. And again, if you're an incoming Gen Z, what should they be also be mindful of, kind of the do's and don'ts?
So for the boss, be aware that the bullshit meter of the Gen Z is very sensitive, and it's always going ting, 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 like that. So be honest, be straight, try and be as transparent as you can. Be open. They can tell your intention. They are smart. So keep an open communication. I would say, I know there are limitations in companies, but this works with them. When they see that your intention is to be fair, to be respectful of what they are bringing to the table, I think they will be far more comfortable and things will progress well. And second, be curious with them, but be willing to learn from them. And quickly, it should just be nice to them. Just be nice to them. Don't penalize them for their age or think that they know less. That top-down kind of an approach, or that's how we approached our interactions with a younger lot. We're not pulling their cheeks or patting them on their head and saying, "Chalo bete," not like that. You respect them because they are people with a lot of agency, and they're people who have a lot of information. The young today,
Yeah.
so they are old. They are physically young, but mentally, they're emotionally also. Sometimes they are quite. They've seen life. They've been there, done that.
Yeah.
So if we remember that and respect what what they bring to the table, just mutual respect, a niceness and openness. These are the things I would urge any older person who's in charge of a younger person today. They understand kindness. And for the younger person, just be kind to us. Know that just know that we can come from a certain a past where we just did what our parents told us. I still wear a dress that my mother picks for me. I'm 62 years old. And if she picks a particular pattern that I may not like, but I wear it because mom picked it for me. So we did what mom did, and we did what dad did mostly. But just understand why we are a certain way. So for the younger generation, I would only urge them to be little kind of the older generations. And also remember that they have a vision for you that nobody else does. Remember that and value that. They are invested in you. They're hugely invested in you because I do believe that this is part of the continuum of the species. So generations need each other. Therefore, they need to be benevolent with each other, be kind to each other.
Yeah. Wow, what a beautiful way to end where I think you said it right. And I think if our Gen Zs are listening, for them, it isn't too far. Perhaps, if they're in a company now, they may see, a few boomers and extras in the conference room now, and they may be the minority. But, if you just fast forward out maybe 10 years from now, it'll be largely them leading those conversations and fewer of us, and maybe more of Gen Alpha and maybe few of Gen Y, which means to say that the tables will turn on them. But I think you make a good way to close out to say that, look, we have a context, they have a context. Let's appreciate the context and try and get the best of each generation. And before we close out, Nirja, you, I know, are a prolific author. You've penned several books. So I will like our listeners to know a little more about all the work that you do. So, where can they find you? What all have you done? And maybe if you want to take a minute just to share that, that would be also great.
All right. Thank you. There was a thought that I was thinking with speaking, Nikhil. Yes. I do want to say before we jump into that remember, everyone, all the listeners, that this is one diversity that will affect every single person out there. Exactly what you said, that the day is not far when they will be leading, they will be preparing others to lead. Just as we are trying to do now, we are trying to help prepare them to lead. So that day is not far. And this is a diversity which affects every single one of us. So important to view each other with, like I said, kindness, with compassion. And I write because I'm constantly observing and seeing things and happening around me, conversations taking place, some news item that catches your eye. And I also believe that the two important things to do for the older generation, one is to shut up and listen. And yes, and shut up and listen and try to operate from a place of fear. The older generations a place of fear because they consider the younger people extensions of themselves, particularly in India. They say we are not used to individuating from our older generation. Perhaps it's true, but remember that that is also what creates and keeps the community. So in all my messaging, I try to say, shut up and listen. This is actually my daughter's tagline. By shut up and listen, what are you saying? You're saying, just listen. Just listen.
Yeah.
Hold yourself. Don't be ready with a response. Just listen. So that is one, because that itself is enough. You don't have to offer solutions many a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the second thing, Nikhil, is I do believe that the earlier generations need to stay a step ahead. And to that effect, I write a regular feature for actually a teacher's magazine. And it's an Aziz Premji magazine called The Teacher Plus. And my thing there is that, have you heard about the renaissance of witches? Have you heard about what the young people are doing with NFTs today? Or do school children know about the crypto? Or what do tattoos actually mean to them? For our generation, it used to be something that gangs did. And we were repelled by tattoos back then. Before that, traditionally, in our culture, it was a done thing. But one is talking about the latter part, the later part. But now, for them, it's self-expression. So you stay a step ahead and try and understand why they're acting a certain way. What is the thought behind what they're doing? What is the worldview behind what they're doing? So essentially, these are my two messages: shut up and listen, stay a step ahead to the older generations. And that's what I do. I keep making shut up and listen videos and articles on staying a step ahead, new phenomena. And all this goes into my books, Nikhil.
Okay. And your books, where can people find your books? Are they available on Amazon, or do you have a website that you'd like to share?
They are available on Amazon. And if you just write Neerja Singh Teenager, they will come up.
Okay.
So online, it is Neerja Singh Teenager or Generational Diversity, and you're sure to find me there.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, there you have it. There is a wealth of knowledge in the several of the books that Neerja has written. And of course, she writes columns for papers, for magazines. So do check that out. But perhaps the one easy way would be to go visit Neerja on her website. And that can give you the way forward to the other things that Neerja does. So Neerja, once again, I'm so very delighted you took the time. This has been fabulous, and really learned, as always, in our interactions with you. And as we close out, I hope that every single Gen Z, every single parent, the bosses, every stakeholder that we think about from the Gen Z perspective can gain insights on the worldview. And you beautifully explained sort of the three phases and how they have led to the worldview, and what the bosses can do and what the Gen Zs can do. So we've set that beautiful context, and I look forward to doing more with you, whether it's a conference or in some other forum. So Neerja, thank you and take care. And I hope to see you in person in Hyderabad at some point, or when your travels bring you to my city.
Thank you very much, Nikhil. It's just fantastic that you're doing this podcast and we are addressing this aspect of our lives today, because I do believe it's our mandate to leave behind a generation that is more potent, more progressive, and more productive than us. That's the mandate. That is what we are supposed to do. And yes, hopefully we are doing some of that with this podcast that you're running. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you and take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.